I am so honored to get to introduce Natalie. We already had the pleasure of speaking with her during the cocktail hour, and I can tell this is just going to be fabulous. So thank you so much, Natalie, for being here. I'm just going to share a little bit about her. Natalie lives a purpose-driven life as the founder and CEO of Black Fox Philanthropy, a leading fundraising strategy firm serving global non-government organizations, or NGOs, that exists to accelerate the social sector's effectiveness in solving complex problems on a global scale. As a B Corp social enterprise, Black Fox Philanthropy measures the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profits. She helps build fundraising capacities for NGOs through a series of training held around the world. Natalie is a Women Moving Millions member and an MCE Social Capital Guarantor, a Gender Lens angel investor, and is a newly minted member of the Founders Pledge. Further, she has been honored by Conscious Company Media as a world-changing woman in conscious business. And her firm, Black Fox Philanthropy, is proud to be selected as a B Corp Best for the World honoree as a Changemaker. Along with her daughter, Sophie, Natalie is an award-winning children's book author, The Secret Adventures of Anonymous, a random acts of kindness, philanthropic SEL picture book aimed at 3 to 6-year-olds. It's being translated into over a dozen languages worldwide, reaching over 100 million children through social emotional learning curriculum designed by Think Tank based in the UK. So that was a mouthful, Natalie. Thank you so much for allowing me to introduce you. I mean, it's so fabulous to have you, and we're grateful to have you with us tonight. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Cindy, for that. That was a mouthful. Oh my gosh. And it's, I don't know, do you guys ever feel sheepish when like people describe you and you're like, oh my God, who is that? Because, right, our interior lives are just like, we're just us. And so anyway, all the external things, it's actually funny because it ties to the topic of burnout. Like, what does it take to do all of those things and drive yourself to achieve more and more? And I'm a recovered achievement junkie. Recovering. I don't know. I have a wiring around drive. Now it's more drive to do with achievement around impact, and my appetite for impact is pretty staggering. So anyway, thank you so much for inviting me to speak on the topic of burnout, which is actually an epidemic alongside with the pandemic. And I also want to thank Beacon Hill Women's Forum for such intention and vibrancy in how you've built this community. And being a newbie to Boston, it's been so delightful to get to hop into some of the things that that you guys have done in the past. I met friends through Beacon Hill Women's Forum, my Botox go-to person, Sue Bush, through Beacon Hill Women's Forum, and others. So super, super grateful. So in addition to the topic of burnout, Cindy and the organizers invited me to also share my journey as a woman, not just the founder of a social enterprise. And I know as well, Beacon Hill Women's Forum has a tradition of inviting the whole woman into the conversation, including struggles, accomplishments, and more. So to do with Black Fox Philanthropy, as well as what drives me in creating that company and why. I'll just name that I think our deepest passions often spring from our deepest wounds. And so I cannot bear to witness suffering, having had experienced my fair share of it. And it pains me deeply to see others enduring great struggle. And that is part of the drive to catalyze change. But I also get vicarious trauma. So I cannot be on the front lines. We work with clients, so, really some of the most intractable global problems. In fact, Refuge Point, Sarah Heidi's organization, for example, others are, Tostan, they're eradicating child marriage, female genital cutting in West Africa, Culture Reframed, tackling porn as the health crisis of the digital age, Lift Our Voices. Gretchen Carlson is a client. She took down Roger Ailes of Fox News. Nicole Kidman played her in the movie Bombshell. and their work and what they're working to eradicate forced NDAs that silence women and perpetuate cultures where harassment can continue. Global grassroots, cultivating women leaders in post-war countries like Rwanda, Uganda, where rape is used as a tool of war, and more. And so with Black Fox Philanthropy, and my edge as an empath is our place in the ecosystem really honors my drive for impact, but also my need to be one or two layers back. So we consider ourselves the helpers to the real helpers. So I just learned this in France, that there's a saying, l'argent est la nerf de la guerre. Money is the nerve of war. And in the nonprofit world, I say money is the nerve of peace. So it's an important lever for driving change, and fundraising happens to be my superpower. I'm no longer on the front lines. We have a team of 40 now, all over, mostly the US, but many team members all over the world as well. So I'm no longer on the front lines of fundraising. I work more on the business than in the business. But again, I have a very important role to play in the company and in the ecosystem. So with the topic of burnout to bliss, I want to ensure there's time to cover the tactical things that provide more spaciousness in our lives. But again, honoring the tradition of Beacon Hill Women's Forum about sharing personal struggles on our journeys of reclaiming our wholeness as women of substance. Thank you for saying that how much the members are women of such influence, substance, and more. And how do we embody that while also owning the fact that we're also human and have had, tremendous struggle in personal lives, professional lives, and more. So I was thinking like, which one do I like? Where do I begin? It's been like really a monkey knife fight. I actually asked them to send over in the latest, in the announcement later, I was like, there's so much to cover. So I asked them to just like, I don't even know where to begin. So here's the Thrive Global piece that was written that kind of covers a lot of that. Basically super normal, what Meg J considers super normal. People have endured extraordinary childhood adversity who go on to lead lives of contribution. And in many, many cases, lives of tremendous success. I will say I'm living a life of contribution. I don't know about success, but I feel successful in terms of the impact we're able to have on a global scale. So when I was thinking about which one do I really want to share, I haven't talked about this publicly, but I have decided to talk about mental health issues. In 2017, within 60 days of getting out of a very unhealthy marriage, I had severe PTSD, and it literally brought me to my knees. And I wanted to just touch upon it because mental health crisis in this country and globally, it's more in the mainstream conversation, in part due to the pandemic, but also the more people who come forward and name it with their stories, it creates space for others to emerge from isolation, shame, seek the healing and community that's available to all of us. But there are in the story, it'll be revealed why I chose this. So basically, there's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score, and Vanderbeek. And so all the trauma I endured in 15 years of marriage, including countless betrayals of myself at the altar of external peace, were unleashed really like Pandora's box. It truly brought me to my knees. It was insomnia, panic attacks. I didn't understand what was going on because everything was fine. I finally got out. And yet, with The Body Keeps the Score, my body finally felt that it got out. It was safe for all the trauma to come up. So I want to share what's unfolded in the hopes that it can be a guidepost to others who find themselves with illness. My case was an invisible illness. PTSD is mental illness. So maybe there are women in the community in struggle around that, or have loved ones that are in struggle. And I want to name it as well because doctors for months and months could not figure it out. And they wanted to prescribe just the most horrific horse pills. And I am a runner and living in Boulder, Colorado, crunchy, fit, and more, very mindful about what I put into my body. And so while I could not fathom how I was going to get through another day, I still at the end of it knew that those prescriptions were not for me. So it was 4.5 months of just abject terror and pain and struggle and not knowing if I was going to live or die through it, to be honest. So, but here's the amazing thing that came out of it. I was so terrified. I had no idea what it was. I could be just driving to the DMV, having no worrisome thoughts, and I'd have a panic attack, right? So I would talk about it with other women, like, I'm really scared. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm researching trauma centers. And what ended up occurring was so many women, a shocking number of women, came forward privately, separately, and would say, I went through this, and this was over a year. I was suicidal. I was leaving my family. And there's one woman, I was like, Heather, I knew you that whole year. My daughter's best friend's mother. I was like, Heather, I knew you that whole year. She'd go, yeah, I'd answer the door with a smile. Nobody knew. And it was over a year she endured this. And to be actually radical candor, if I had to endure that for a year or more, I probably would have been suicidal too. Fortunately, it did get figured out through, again, doctor to doctor, couldn't figure it out. I was driven to other modalities like craniosacral therapy, Rolfing, acupuncture, you name it. And finally was able to hop the wait list for this very well-known shaman who within 10 minutes figured it out. And we were talking for 10 minutes. He said, let me check something. And he like pressed back here. He goes, yeah, I can't even get my thumb in there, pressing into my neck. And he's like, hop on the table. And he said, my vagus nerve was compressed. So the vagal system, it's basically, when it was compressed, I went into fight, flight, panic. My body thought it was dying. So imagine 4.5 months of not being able to sleep. Ambien, of course, that was the one thing I was like popping Ambien, like, please God, let me sleep. And wide awake, even with like crazy amounts of Ambien in my system. So anyway, hopped on the table for an hour. He did his magic body work and he's like humming a shaman stuff, and I haven't had a panic attack since. So I don't know if there's a moral to the story other than what I learned was being able to being one to talk about it, learning that so many other women were suffering in shame and isolation because they didn't want to be perceived as not perfect. Our culture is so hard on us. Our culture demands that we wear masks as women. I think someone named it earlier about, there's so much being asked of us as women, as mothers, as leaders, as, being in the community and more. And a lot of it is like really demanding that we wear masks and staying in the lane that we've been assigned. And I won't go into the unhealthy marriage, but these are all, contributors. And I lost y'all. There we go. So there was a lot that occurred between that terror and that healing. And there is a lot of gold. And to be clear, I was complicit in the marriage dynamic that resulted in pretty much a slow and agonizing death of self, largely at my own hand by trading my voice and power for what I could only call the illusion of peace. But the thing is, I was teaching my daughter, like as a woman who is so focused upon women's empowerment and actually the Women's Foundation of Colorado CEO called today and go, we just did a tally of your lifetime giving and it's this number and thank you. And I was like, shit, that's a lot of money. I didn't realize it was like, please don't call me and tell me that. I'm making me nervous. But anyway, basically I was on the board of the foundation. I was working in the community. Now I'm working globally on women's rights and more. But in the home, I was teaching my daughter, look, sweetie, these are the people we give our power to, because I was contracted in the home, even though it looked like my full self out in the world. So at the end of the day, I left to show her another way to be a woman, particularly in a culture and very often relationships that can be brutally punishing to women who go outside of the narrow lane assigned to them. So I wanted to just kind of name this because it's not really shining a light upon me and my journey as much as shining a light upon an epidemic. And I didn't realize it was an epidemic until I started talking about it and people privately started coming to me. And now that it's more and more into the mainstream conversation, it's been in the shadows and in plain sight all along for many, many, many years. So wanted to just create space about, having that conversation and in the hopes that people can, find a community and comfort in knowing that they're not alone. And I thought one day I would want to do a TED Talk using the framework of Dante's Divine Comedy around Inferno, and being Virgil, being that kind of tour guide of what it looks like to go through the gates of hell. So, and the other thing that I want to name is, at the same time that this was happening, I had a dear friend with breast cancer, and I was on a wait list to bring her food, to spend the night with her. And then I had another friend, she did a TED Talk on, the greatest gift she ever received, which was basically her brain tumor diagnosis and the outpouring of incredible support. And yet when it came to my invisible illness or potentially mental illness, it was absolute crickets, including a community I built for 20 years. It was absolute crickets, in part because of the divorce, and in part, I don't know, but my close friends circled the wagons around me. But I thought, isn't that interesting that if you have something like brain tumor or breast cancer, the cavalry comes, there's a waiting list of support. But if you have an invisible illness or a mental illness, it's crickets. So that needs to shift. And that's where maybe doing a TED Talk at some point on that would be of interest. So anyway, just wanted to share that as far as a personal struggle that I also consider an extraordinary achievement, having lived through it. I think the miracle is that my company continued to thrive and grow, and I'd have to crawl to a Zoom meeting and then crawl back away. But fortunately, I had an infrastructure and a team that was able to carry things through. And so anyway, I'm just going to take a breath there, because as I said, I've never publicly talked about any of that, and there's much more to say, but that's kind of the gist of it. And I hope I don't have a vulnerability hangover tomorrow. I might. But on the topic of burnout, so I'm letting people in from the waiting room, by the way. If you see me distracted, I'm like, since I'm one of the hosts, and I'm so used to doing that all day in my job. So it's like a automatic habit. So to do with from burnout to bliss, how did I live through that? Well, a lot of it was infrastructure around, having a solid team and more, but I didn't always have that. So radical candor, I'm on the journey with you and everyone else who faces burnout. I have flirted with burnout again late last year. This is my year of no, my year of yin. And my challenge is, it's really easy to say no to mediocre things. It's really hard to say no to compelling things like getting to be in community with you guys. So I don't know how I'm doing about it, but one of my goals for the year too is also to build community in Boston. So that's one of the reasons why this was a full body yes. But I still, really don't always get it right. But I'm happy to share some hacks, some tips, some things that I've learned over the years to help kind of get me out of the cycle of burnout. But, you could Google burnout and tips and tricks. You don't need me to talk about it. I'm not Natalie on the mountaintop. What I did want to talk about is kind of the things that drive us toward burnout. And what drove me in the past are edges I still work on, but they've become gentler companions over time once I brought them out into the shadows. So I'll name some of those edges in case some of you can relate, especially those of you in your maybe mid 50s like me, who came up in an era where do more, be more, have more was the ethos, especially in Washington, DC. Workaholism was a badge of honor. I also came up in a culture that took the feminist message of you can be anything and hijacked it into you have to be everything. I don't know if y'all know the Angelique commercial. I can bring home the bacon fried up in a pan, never let him forget he's a man. The 8-hour perfume for the 24-hour woman. So it was this, and just one example of of advertising hijacking the feminist message of you can be anything and making it into now you have to be everything, and the toll that's taken. I have a core belief that I will let people down if I don't meet their needs in my personal and professional life. In short, putting the well-being of others before my own. My work, this sector, it's a body snatcher. And most of us in the global space know this is one of our soul assignments. I'm very clear this is a soul assignment. And I think that's why the company has survived and thrived through the struggles I've had, is because the world needs this. And the universe is like having my back on making sure we're doing what we're meant to do in the world. So, but that body snatcher, it's, the stakes are high and the work's never done. I also have a fear that if I'm not on top of everything, then people are going to find out I'm not that smart. There's that imposter, at least not in the way they are. Like there's imposter syndrome has driven me to some extent. And last but not least, if I slow down, I would have to feel the pain of my former marriage and the struggles with my teen daughter, and outrunning that. I've noticed, I've sort of named it as something to keep an eye on, to always keep moving, then that can drive you toward burnout as well. So I unearthed these edges while completing my inner MBA, which is through Mindful NYU and Sounds True and Wisdom 2.0. So it's the work of Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy, and they believe that change often fails because people focus solely on the behavior, but not the underlying unconscious commitments that we have. So we need to, yes, focus upon skill set, but also adaptive changes to a person's mindset. And they posit that mindset transformation requires overcoming blind spots, unearthing our competing commitments, and freeing ourselves of limiting assumptions. So we had to map out ways that block progress, ways in why we are immune to change despite the desire to change. And I'm going to do a screen share. This is one of those things where it was never, ever, ever meant to be public facing. This was like my coursework with Inner MBA, but I'm going to share it anyway. Radical candor, part of our company culture and in community with you guys. So this is the immunity to change map. And I'll just focus upon, and I'm sharing with you just shine a light upon, what is it that you want to do? What are you doing, not doing? What are the meeting commitments, and what are the big assumptions? So definitely vulnerability hangover tomorrow, but I'll choose the improvement goal I had of play, adventure, deep rest. And what am I doing, not doing? I say I have this work ethic and I don't know how to play. I hunker down in coffee shops on beautiful days when I could be at the beach. I'm an island and don't reach out to friends as much as I could. So these are things that I'm doing, not doing, that really are not serving what I actually say and feel that I truly want. What are the competing commitments? I need to stay on top of things. I need to look put together. I need to keep achieving my 3 wiring. I'm an Enneagram 3, if you guys know Enneagram, which is the achiever. With a 2 wing, which is the nurturer, which makes perfect sense that I'm achieving in the social sector. And we're all very clear that we're in the healing space. We are healers, not one-on-one healers, but very much identify as healers in our company. I need to be strong, self-sufficient. And what are my big assumptions that drive me? If I don't stay on top of things, then I will look bad. I will let people down if I don't meet their needs. And people are busy, they have their own lives. I'll seem needy. So these are all things that kind of came into the light through the Inner MBA and through this coursework. Like I keep saying, I'm going to take this off screen share because it really is one of those like, oh my God, this was not meant to be public facing. But I keep saying year over year, well, I want to play more. I want to have more adventure. I want all these things. And another year goes by and it's not happening. Did I achieve more? Yes. Is there more on my resume? 100%. But am I doing the thing that brings me joy and juice in my life? Like, why? So I wanted to just kind of bring that into this conversation as well, because if you guys opted into a session called From Burnout to Bliss, chances are you're also working with some edges in your personal life and your professional lives. And there's so many things that really just even being the matriarch of your family, that I have to do all of these things, or blank, blank, blank. And you might not even be like consciously aware of them. So, so there's so much more. And normally if I would do it, like I did a session on this last year at the Skoll World Forum out of Oxford, where we went into dyads. There's so much more richness here. But what I'd like to do is go into what are the tactical things that we can do, or that I've done. Again, not Natalie on the mountaintop as much as these are the hacks that I found have worked, just to hopefully bring in some more spaciousness and joy into your lives as well. There, admit. So mindset shift. My company is not about me or my caregiving or my work ethic. It's about the mission. The North Star question had to become, what does Black Fox Philanthropy need? And a key question within that is, what does Black Fox Philanthropy need to do with me, the founder? And in your case, what does my family need to do with me, the matriarch, for those who are maybe more focused in the home as your work and your raison d'etre. So the firm needed me to be grounded and supported, my well-being a priority. Black Fox did not need me to take care of everyone around me, to put others' needs before my own or the firm's at the expense of the mission. The new lens enabled me to make hard decisions that resulted in greater overall health, sustainability, and boundaries of the company, but importantly, boundaries for myself, and set me free from feeling I needed to hold up the sky for anyone involved in the firm, which was really a false belief that served no one ultimately and limited our ability for impact. Another huge game changer, part-time virtual assistant. Julie Collings has been supporting me for over 4 years. And that's time I would have had, 20 hours a week where she's doing scheduling. There's so many things. And there's so much you could Google about virtual assistant. It is absolutely game changing. But I think another hack that has changed, that has done so much for me in my personal life, is Fancy Hands. And they're a virtual assistant company. They're about $12 to $15 an hour or $4 a task. So I am now a delegating ninja. My first coach when I started Black Fox Philanthropy is the woman who wrote the book $1 Million Women. And I read the book and I called her. I was like, Julia, her name's Julia Pimsler. I want you to be my coach. She's like, I don't do that. I'm like, yes, you do. And I want you to be my coach. She's like, well, I don't do that. I'm like, yes, you do. And I want you to be my coach. So she called her coach. She's like, this woman won't let me alone. And she's like, will you coach me to be a coach? Well, now she has this huge coaching platform. And anyways, awesome. So that was her first client. And she taught me to be a delegating ninja. So with Fancy Hands, I'll give you some examples. Well, first I hopped on my dashboard before the call to go, like, how much time has it really saved me? And it says it has saved me 11 days. I am sure it's more than that. But recent examples of personal requests from Fancy Hands, and there's other companies that do this. I just happen to use Fancy Hands. Diego's done my budget tracking for 3 years. I give him my budget at the beginning of the year. For $12 a month, I get a full report of all my spending and where I'm tracking, where I'm going over budget, the year-end summary. Crazy town, right? I'll find a camera I really want. It's expensive, or say it's $1,500. I'll send it to Fancy Hands for $4. Find me a much better price. This is the camera I want. Find me a better price. They come back with $300 less, $500 less. They've just paid for themselves for the year. LinkedIn connected me to these conference attendees with this note, misconnection in Oxford, da, 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 da. And now I'm LinkedIn connected to 300 people from my space who are potential clients of ours. And all I did was LinkedIn connect me to this delegate list with this note. So most recent, because of Paris, find me a 3-bedroom apartment in Paris in the 6th district with dates available from X and X with ratings of X stars, allows me option to cancel with 2 weeks notice. Find me a curling iron with European plug that ships to the US. Find me the cheapest round trip nonstop flight in this date range. Find out where I can get a COVID test in Paris in the 6th district between 0.2 miles of this address. I mean, in 14 requests, just in the last month, it's cost me $56. And I cannot tell you the amount of time that it saved me while getting to allocate that time to more blissful pursuits. So those are some of the other just kind of hacks that I've done. Also, daily mindful. I'm looking at time, so I'm speeding up talking. So hopefully that's okay with y'all. Daily mindfulness practice also helps me get ahead of burnout. Granular hacks. Ruthless with email. Again, these are things you can Google, but I'll just share. These are the things that are working for me specifically. Ruthless with email. 3 categories: do, delegate, delete. If it's mine to do and it takes 2 minutes or less, I just do it there. I don't look at it 10 times. I do things, we have a saying in our company, do it ugly, but get it done. So in our internal company FAQ, one of the questions is, what's up with all of Natalie's typos? I used to write works of art and like, right. And that coach was like, have you ever seen a male CEO's emails? They are crap. The grammar's crap. There's typos. And I'm just like, God, you're right. So anyway, in our company FAQ, what's up with all of Natalie's typos? And I type like literally up to 100 words a minute. And I just want to get the information out because there's so much I need to do in my day. Ugly first draft. I've had gorgeous works of art blog posts where I've just said to a ghostwriter, literally fancy hands, 3 tasks, $12. Here's the conference. These are the people I interviewed. Here's all my raw notes. Give me the ugly first draft. $12. Amazing. Litmus test is doing this map to accomplishing my goals, my priorities. How does it move X forward? I give myself permission to slow down, enjoy the success now. But I often have to write myself a permission slip, and I actually have a physical permission slip to remind me that I'll like go, oh yeah, go for a walk. I also, one of my hacks, and y'all, Cindy, you mentioned the children's book. So I started Black Fox Philanthropy the same time my daughter and I created this children's book, and I had no time to market it. And I wasn't interested in marketing it. Like that's a whole other industry unto itself. And I was clear that what my lever for impact was Black Fox Philanthropy. So, but it is a social emotional learning book that I knew it was our job to get it in the world. After that, I was like, it's not mine to do after that. So I literally took a piece of paper and I wrote God's to-do list. And I wrote, put Anonymous into the world. And I just put the piece of paper away. And I was like, that's all I can do. And within 2 weeks, the founder of Think Equal out of the UK said, we just read your book and it was written for us. Can we have it? And now it's reaching 100 million kids worldwide. Thank you, God's to-do list. And now, although if y'all want a book, please tell me, because I was like, good, I don't have to sell it, I don't have to market it, did what it meant to do in the world. I have boxes of it because then I never ended up marketing it because within 2 weeks, it did what it meant to do in the world. So I have tons of books, y'all. Although I am handing them out by the ducks in public gardens, or I typically have one in my purse, especially over the holidays, where I see some cutie pie thing and I'll like the mom's busy and I'll just like put it in the stroller and like suddenly there's a book and they don't know where it came from, which is kind of the point of Anonymous, which is the true story of my daughter who would do incredibly kind deeds and would write notes from Anonymous. So it's the story of her. We kind of outed her when the book was published, but we just covered a lot. And I know the goal too was to have time for Q&A. So I'll take a breath and turn it back over to Cindy or whomever, just to see if you have any questions, anything that's coming up for you around some of the things I've touched upon.
Natalie, bravo. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing too. I mean,
oh, my pleasure.
That was beautiful. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, I mean, there's a little raise your hand, or you could just unmute yourself and ask Natalie or share in the chat.
Okay,
I grabbed one of the books so y'all could see. It's so cute.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm so
you can't buy it, by the way. I have to just give it to you because I didn't want the hassle.
So I'm still on the comment of stay in your lane and how you had like taught that to your daughter. And I was just wondering what was the lane and what were things that like you realized you should break out of?
Yeah. So I was my corporate background, my first 17 years was in corporate travel management, and I'm in mid-30s. I was VP of sales and marketing of the largest woman-owned company in Colorado. So not some shrinking violet, but I met a wealthy CEO, and basically I felt like just an acquisition. Not at first, but then it became very, very clear. And there was this is being recorded, but just hopefully it's staying within Big and Women's Forum. But there's very much a control retaliation pattern where if I gained weight or when at a girls' night, when he was in town, any of the things that were inconvenient to him, the retaliation was, there were consequences. And so over time, just kind of really contracted, and then kind of went in through the something of the Stepford wife, kind of I'm at my core a rebel, and which is one of the reasons I was able to get out. But I think, yeah, staying in my lane as what was expected of me as the wife or as the acquisition, when my own sovereign being was just like dying on the vine and knew that this wasn't the life for me, wasn't the relationship for me. And so staying in the lane was, you know, what was being demanded of me as a woman in the culture. I have an inner patriarch. We all have an inner patriarch. The stories I told myself to play that part, and the trade-offs I was making, it's keeping the peace in the family. There was no peace. It was an absolute illusion. It was an external illusion. And we looked so perfect, the mansion, I won't go into all of that. And so people thought I was nuts for leaving. Like, he adores you. Anyway, that's all of that aside. And to be clear, I'm not a victim. I was very complicit in the dynamic that was created, so much unconsciously, but I was a full participant because I stopped kind of standing my ground, because I did feel like the consequences, the price was too high. And yet that was my mistake. The price was much higher to not stand in my sovereignty. And I think the marriage might have had a shot if we were able to be in relationship with each other in a different way, where he could maybe shift his mindset about, acquisition versus partner. I don't know if he could have ever gotten there. It's not interested in that, knowing that or caring. But very much the impact it had upon my daughter. It was definitely one of the big drivers for leaving when I did leave. Was I understood that I was told, as I was exploring all these things, because what's the impact upon my daughter? What's the impact upon my daughter? That was always like the guiding question, like the North Star question. And I learned, and one of the reasons why I finally took the leap was that kids are pretty much fully baked in their belief system and wiring and more by the time they're 12. And so I thought, I have got to get out before she is 13, because this is not the template or the imprint I want for her in her relationships, in her life, or what it means to be a woman in our culture looks like this. I'm learning at the knee of the master, my mom. My mom taught me this is what it means to be a woman in a marriage or in our culture. And those very conflicting messages, because I was also bringing her to the Women's Foundation of Colorado lunches, and I would be on the stage and behind the podium, and so people like wait, this makes absolutely no sense. So again, it's one of those things that's in the shadows and in plain sight, if people have the eyes to see. But the shock of like my leaving was because you just don't do that in that socioeconomic realm. People don't want to give up the lifestyle. Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. And I hope that answers your question. I'm kind of rambling because I'm nervous about talking about that topic. It's an uncomfortable, but I'm happy to with this group.
Yeah, thank you. And again, so sorry, but glad you're brave to share.
Well, I mean, I feel like as far as a soul curriculum, I didn't choose an easy one, but who I am on the other side, holy smokes, couldn't have gotten it any other way. And maybe in the spirit world, like if I'm doing a meditation, I'm like, okay, like if you're my best teacher for my growth, my spiritual growth, like if I'll be doing a meditation, I'm like high five him, like, man, like you are just unrelenting, because it's still going on actually through, unfortunately, my daughter's the leaver now, but from a spiritual perspective, it's sort of like, could not have gone into this depth of pain and growth without using my daughter as a lever. So on some level, I can also go, whew, this is no joke. And I am quite astonished at who I've become through the arc of that 20 years of being in relationship with someone like that. Yeah. But there's so much triumph. There's so much triumph with my company. There's so much triumph with friends and community. So I don't want to like kind of dwell there. I mean, I do invite your questions, but oh my God, as a fully expressed woman and like living this extraordinary, like, oh my gosh, I get to live in Boston. Holy smokes. Like, this is so gorgeous and amazing. And so, so there's the yuck, but there's so much yum. And so I'm still dealing with the yuck, but I am completely awake to the embarrassment of riches that is my life right now.
I have a little question. So, hi, thank you so much again, Natalie, for sharing. Really, you're so inspiring. Just, listening to you, one thing that kind of comes to mind is, how do you recognize before you go to that edge? Like, how do you recognize that maybe you're going towards burnout, maybe you're going towards, or maybe you're in a situation, be it at work, be it in a relationship, anywhere, right? Even sometimes friendships can be toxic. So you don't know, but when you're in it, you don't realize it sometimes till it's, I struggle to say too late, but sometimes too late, right? So you've come to this almost like the other side, and you've grown so much. Have you, do you have any inputs and ideas onto what we all can keep in mind, and maybe like a mental check on just our lives and say, you know what, maybe these are the things we need to keep in mind before we move too close to that edge?
Right. Well, it does sneak up on us. It does. I mean, I literally, like, I was on the other side of pretty close burnout. And then I like recalibrated everything to where I was working 4 hours a day. And then I had to let go of someone in a key role in my company. And it threw me into 4 months of not 4 hours a day, let me tell you. And I found myself back really flirting, if not burnout. And I was like, this is crazy. I actually literally have spoken on this topic and facilitate sessions. So, so I will say that, how do I name it before going off the cliff? It's such a good question, and it's so different for everyone. But I will say, here's something I noticed in Paris: how I wore my hair. If I'm feeling contracted, I'm super conservative in my hair. If I'm feeling saucy and happy and up and out, my hair's saucy, hot, or it's like, anyway, so that's like, we all have that's so personal to me. We all have these little things that we are like, this is me feeling joyful and fully expressed, or this is me where I'm getting chipped away and I don't even recognize, I remember that joy. I kind of know what that feels like, but it's so distant to me. So I don't know that I have such a good answer, other than how you are when you're in your flow, in your juice, and then over time it's chipped away, and you're just crawling into bed, or you're just Netflix binging. Whatever it is that is your crutch can be the crutch that cripples. Actually, it doesn't help you. It's actually keeping you kind of down. But if that's what you need to go into a cocoon, if you need to just watch TV for a day, then honor that. So just listening to what it is that you need. And again, it's I can't give you a prescription because everyone's so different. Like for me, the reason I had COVID curves was because I needed to double down on meditation. I needed 90 minutes of meditation in the morning to get me through burnout, to get me through really hard, intense days. And And then kind of staying the course on all this self-care, all the modalities. The thing about the 2017 illness was the tools that I learned and gained from that were absolutely game-changing. I don't recommend going through something like that to get a toolbox of things that help you, but yeah, it's such a good. I'm struggling a little bit because it's such a good question, because others have really struggled with that as well. Like, we're fine until we're not. And that was one of the things that I wrote in the article, was sort of like, we're fine until we're not. And it's this like such like invisible, thin line. So thank you for asking such a good question. It's just really, how well do you know yourself, and what are your tells? What are your tells? And then hopefully getting ahead of it, and implementing those tools before it gets too late. So I know that was kind of a clunky answer, but I don't have, like, I could tell you my tools, tell you my tells, like, oh, I'm contracted, my hair's boring, I haven't shaved my legs in 2 weeks. There's that. So those, I have my tells. I don't know what your tells are. Yeah. And I think just kind of being awake and aware.
Yeah, no, I think that was very helpful. Thank you, Natalie, because honestly, I think we all sort of know our tells, but then we ignore them. And it's so interesting that you mentioned, like, your hair, for example. My tell is whenever I'm super stressed, I want to go get a haircut. It doesn't matter how short or long my hair is. Like, I need a haircut, even if I went last week. So yeah, I kind of understand what you mean by tells.
Yeah, there's your tell. Yeah. Wow. And then what are your tools? What are the things that sustain you? So that you don't go off that cliff. Yes. I'd be so curious for people to put in the chat what their tells are. Like, how they know that they're, that they're flirting with burnout or flirting with something that's, not well-being. I'd be interested to hear. And also, again, this isn't Natalie on the mountaintop. This is like, what are your hacks? What are the things that you guys all do as a community? I mean, let's honor the brain trust of this incredible community. So, of course, put in chat things that have been really, really effective for you, because let's face it, like raising families, running companies, or leading a division of a company, or being a startup, running a small business. I mean, you name it. It is no joke. It is no joke. And women in particular, I mean, all the data is there around the disproportionate, household chore, all of the things. It just, in the 80s, there was an article with Michelle Pfeiffer, and it goes back to the Angelique commercial. She had a frying pan and the kids and a business suit, and she had to make $100,000 a year, but which at the time was a lot of money, and she had to look like Michelle Pfeiffer in a gown and all of those things. And the article was about like what's being asked of women. And what's really messed up about my telling that story is I read that article, I looked at that illustration in my mid-20s, and I was like, I can do that. Instead of going, that is jacked up, I was like, yeah, I can do that. And then a year of hard driving. And, I didn't get to be a corporate executive in my mid-30s. I did get to launch a nonprofit that I bequeathed to the Denver Art Museum. And that's exciting and success, and get to, launch this business that now has a global footprint and impact. So there's the upside, but at the end of the day, if I'm not fed and vital, then the company can't be fed and vital, and we can't do our best work. Ice cream every night. Oh.
Ladies and Natalie in particular, thank you very much for this, for sharing everything. Thank you so much. This is my first day in your community. I've just registered today, and I'm very happy to be with you, and I hope to see you all in person one day. So thank you. Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Natalie, for such a wonderful session. Yeah. I think we all learned a lot from you, and you were so inspiring. So we really appreciate it. And we hope to see you around, in our community.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for welcoming me into your community. It's such an extraordinary group of women.
We love seeing you at, the Feast with Friends and, like that. So
yeah, super good. Well, thank you guys so much. I think we are at time. Wow, that flew. Holy smokes. Awesome. Well, thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Amy, all the organizers, the community. It was really a pleasure and honor to get to be in community with you tonight.
Thank you very much.
Super. Okay. Bye, guys.
Thank you.